People ask me often, what does it mean? What do you mean when you say be steady, human, and at your best? When the world around you is changing wildly, becoming more uncertain. I like to say when the world around you is far from being its best, right? How do you be your best? And most people, myself included, for the longest time thought that meant I have to perform my best. I have to hunker down, squeeze, hold my breath, and just try to get through this moment of pressure, overwhelm, or whatever it is that has me worried. And as I mentioned in the past, that led me to a very sobering point. I did it really well and very effectively led myself to a breaking point. And then exploring all these different bodies of wisdom, ranging from neuroscience, psychology, to Kriya Yoga, to even indigenous perspectives, what I began to understand was actually everything is trying to point us in the exact opposite direction. That in this moment, here, right now, there's only one species on the planet, let alone, I think, in the universe, that has convinced itself that it's normal to spend even a fraction of a moment trying to be something it's not, feeling like it has to be at odds with itself, has to go against the natural currents of life, including itself, in terms of how it shows up and how it relates to the world and so forth. And that's humans. And look at our relationship to ourselves. Look at our relationship to nature. And this isn't to criticize humans, it's to say that served us to a point, but I think it's safe to say that we're reaching a point where we can't continue in this way. And if you take the fact that there's so much disruption, so much uncertainty, so much pressure in the modern world to try to just hunker deep and continue being at odds with ourselves isn't sustainable. You can feel it in your body. You can feel it when you go to bed at night. You can feel it when you look in the mirror and go like, God, you feel so disconnected from who you really are. You may not even remember who you really are, especially if you were like I was. And so the question becomes, what can you do? What do you do? There are two actual aspects, things that we need to do differently, that are foundational to completely transforming how we show up when the world around us is far from being its best. The first thing is this thing I call radical resilience. Radical in this case isn't about being extreme. It's about taking inspiration from the natural world. In botany, radicle, radical, pronounced the same way, refers to the first root that comes out of the seed, whether it's a plant or a tree. The root that becomes the source from which life is emerging for this growing plant, this growing tree. And radical resilience is about, instead of hunkering down and feeling like I've got to get through this pressure, this overwhelm, and the things that have me worried, it's about going, wait a second, life is opening a doorway to me in this moment to actually go the opposite direction, to lean into the source of my vitality, to access greater vision, creativity, clarity, and presence in a way. And more of what I like to call our inner truth, the authenticity, the intuition, the unique ways that we each showed up to see, to feel, and to relate to the world around us. When we act from that place, like that steady root, that radical, man, can we have a radically different experience. We can transform our relationship to pressure, overwhelm, and worry. And actually, in the environment in which we can have the greatest impact, we can be steady, human, and at our best. The second thing that we need is something I call your zone of fulfillment. And I'm going to give you just a very, very simple overview of what that is. And then I'm going to save that for many other videos because that's at the core of all my work. I spent years studying fulfillment because I was curious, why are there all these examples of people who are achieving and getting to the things that I want and seem very, very unfulfilled? There have people who have massive impact or working in their passion space, but they burn out. People have a lot of money or a lot of impact, but they're really, really unhappy and unfulfilled on the inside. Or people who achieve their dreams, and then the next day they feel empty because they're like, what now? And then they pick up the next dream, and unless they're running towards their dream, they can't actually feel at peace in themselves. All these things didn't add up for me. And what I began to realize studying all these different bodies of wisdom going, okay, how do they come together? What I found was actually where we perform our best, where we light up, where we actually feel fulfilled is in this zone, in this sweet spot of relating to this moment in a special way, in a certain way, in a way in which we're aligned with who and how we are, where we fill up full with our vitality, where we fill up full with our authentic vision, and where we fill up full with our truth in this moment. The things that you're passionate about, the things that you dream about, the things that give rise to your values, they're in essence extensions. They are things that underneath all that give you surface area to embody these ways of being that you simply showed up to embody, just like the oak tree that has its radical root come out so that it can be here to be an oak tree. That's what you're here to be. But you have spent your entire life being told and taught and conditioned to think that you're something else. And I don't mean in terms of your career. I don't mean your job. I don't mean your life task. I mean how you see yourself, how you understand yourself, and what and who and how you are. Imagine that you grew up in a family that said, no, you're here to be a dandelion. No matter how successful you are, you're always going to feel at odds with yourself. And so you go to school to learn to be a better dandelion. You get a career to be a more successful dandelion. You then find yourself feeling more and more at odds with yourself and more tired and more resentful of something you can't quite name. And so then you go to a workshop that says, how do you be a more grateful dandelion? And how do you be a more spiritual dandelion? And how do you be a more high-performing dandelion? The point is that the entire time that you are succeeding at that, at odds with the ways that you showed up to be, it's never going to work. And so you're always going to feel that something's missing. But the moment that you begin to build relationship to what that is and allow yourself to embody and express that, no matter what's happening around you, no matter how crazy the world is, then just like an oak tree that becomes a source, an anchor in the biggest storm, or when we're having just one of those days and we go into nature and we lean against the base of the oak tree and we feel steadiness and we find our humanity again, that's what we can embody. That's what we can share with the world. And so radical resilience is where we start in terms of shifting our relationship to the thing that takes us far out of our zone of fulfillment so that we can open the doorway back to aligning with our zone of fulfillment in the middle of the stress, in the middle of the mess, when it matters most.